It was almost midnight, and the rain outside the Grand Haven Hotel poured heavily against the tall glass windows. Inside the warm and quiet restaurant, a young waitress named Emily Parker was wiping down the tables for the last time that night. She was tired, her legs ached, and her eyes felt heavy from working since early morning. But she couldn't afford to complain. Emily was used to long hours. Ever since her mother's health had started getting worse, Emily had taken every extra shift she could get. She needed every dollar to pay for her mother's medicine and hospital visits. The restaurant was almost empty now. The soft sound of jazz music played in the background, and the few guests who were still around were either sipping coffee or chatting quietly. The other waiters had already clocked out, leaving Emily to close up alone. She was just about to turn off the lights when she noticed someone sitting alone at the far end of the bar. The man looked to be in his 40s, wearing an expensive black suit that was now wrinkled. His head rested heavily on his hand, and beside him were 2 empty wine bottles and a half-filled glass. His face looked tired, not just from the alcohol, but from something deeper, like life had weighed him down. Emily sighed. It wasn't unusual to see drunk guests in a hotel bar, but something about this man made her pause. When she looked closer, she noticed a few details that didn't fit. His shoes were Italian leather, clearly designer. The watch on his wrist shone under the dim bar light. It wasn't just fancy. It was one of those limited edition luxury watches she had only ever seen in magazines. Who is he? She wondered quietly. A normal hotel guest wouldn't wear something that expensive. As she walked closer, she could hear him muttering under his breath. His voice was low and shaky, and the words didn't make much sense at first. Lost everything. Can't trust anyone anymore. They took it all. He sounded heartbroken, not angry, like a man who had been betrayed by the world. Emily hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to intrude. It wasn't really her job to deal with drunk customers, especially ones who could easily afford a suite upstairs. But leaving him like that didn't feel right either. He could pass out or worse, hurt himself. "Sir?" she said softly, placing a gentle hand on the bar. "Are you okay? Do you need me to call someone for you?" The man slowly lifted his head. His eyes were red, not just from drinking, but from crying earlier. He tried to smile but failed. "No one to call," he muttered. "No one left to trust." His words hit Emily in a strange way. She didn't know what he meant, but she could feel his pain. She noticed that most of the other staff members passing by were pretending not to see him. One of the bartenders whispered, "Just leave him. Probably another spoiled rich guy who drank too much." Emily frowned. Maybe that was true. But what if it wasn't? She took a deep breath. "Sir, I think it's best if you go back to your room and get some rest," she said kindly. "I can help you upstairs if you tell me your room number." The man blinked slowly, trying to focus. After a moment, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a shiny key card. It read Penthouse Suite 1801. Of course, she thought. The most expensive room in the hotel. Emily looked around for help, but everyone had disappeared. She was on her own. The man was tall and heavy, but she managed to lift him from his chair, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. "Come on, let's get you upstairs," she said with effort, trying to keep him steady. He mumbled something about everything falling apart, and she just nodded quietly. The walk to the elevator felt endless. The man stumbled a few times, and Emily nearly lost her balance, but she didn't give up. Inside the elevator, he leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. For a second, their eyes met in the reflection of the elevator mirror. Emily saw not a drunk man, but someone deeply hurt, someone who had lost faith in everyone around him. When they finally reached the penthouse, she used his key card to open the door. The room was massive, marble floors, gold lamps, and a huge bed that looked untouched. She carefully guided him to the bed and helped him sit down. He tried to speak again, but his words were slurred. "You're kind," he said quietly. Then, before she could reply, he collapsed onto the pillow and fell asleep almost instantly. Emily stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. She noticed the room was spotless and quiet, except for the sound of rain outside the window. She found a glass, filled it with water, and placed it on the bedside table. Then she took a small piece of hotel notepaper and wrote a note in neat handwriting. "Drink this when you wake up. Hope you feel better. Emily, Waitress." She smiled softly, left the note beside the glass, and turned off the lights. Before leaving, she made sure the door was locked from the outside for his safety. As she walked back to the bar, her uniform soaked from sweat and rain, she didn't feel like she had done anything special. In her mind, she just helped someone who needed it. She didn't know his name, his story, or his wealth. To her, he was simply a man who looked lost and broken. What Emily didn't know was that this small act of kindness, done quietly in the middle of a rainy night, would soon change her life in ways she could never imagine. The next morning, Emily came back to work as usual, her mind already busy with a list of things to do. The rain had finally stopped, and the sun was shining through the large hotel windows. She smiled a little, hoping it would be a good day. She didn't think much about the drunk man from last night. To her, it was just another part of her job, helping people even if they didn't notice. As she cleaned the tables near the bar, her coworker Lily walked over with a grin. "Hey, Emily, I heard you helped some rich guy get to his room last night." The bartender said he was totally out of it. Emily blushed a little. "Yeah, he was really drunk. I couldn't just leave him there." Lily laughed. "You're too nice for your own good. If he was that rich, he could have called one of his assistants or something." Emily shrugged. "Maybe, but he seemed sad. Not like a typical drunk person. Like he'd lost something important." She didn't know why she said that. Maybe it was the way his voice had cracked when he said, "No one left to trust." There was something lonely in that sentence that stayed in her mind. By afternoon, the story had spread among the staff. Some said he was probably a celebrity. Others guessed he was a businessman. The hotel often hosted wealthy guests, so nobody found it too strange. Still, the thought of him made Emily wonder. Who was he really? Later that evening, when the night shift started again, Emily found herself glancing toward the bar every few minutes. The seat he had taken last night was empty, but his image lingered in her mind. His tired eyes, his wrinkled suit, and that expensive watch. It had looked out of place on a man who seemed so broken. Around 9 p.m., she asked the front desk clerk, James, if he had checked out yet. James looked up from his computer. "The guest in the penthouse? No, he's still there. But his assistant came this morning to drop off some documents. Must be someone important." Emily nodded slowly. She didn't need to know more. As far as she was concerned, her part in his story was over. But life has a strange way of continuing stories we think are finished. The next night, Emily was again on duty. The restaurant was busier than usual. A group of businessmen were having dinner, and the atmosphere was louder. She was rushing between tables, serving food, when a deep voice spoke from behind her. "Excuse me, miss," the voice said. Emily turned, expecting another order. But it was him, the same man she had helped 2 nights ago. Only this time he looked completely different. He was clean-shaven, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit, and his eyes were sharp and calm. For a moment, she didn't even recognize him. "Oh, you're awake," she blurted out before she could stop herself. He smiled slightly. "I am. Thanks to you." Emily felt her face turn red. "I'm glad you're feeling better, sir. You had a bit too much to drink that night." He chuckled softly, the kind of laugh that sounded warm but carried a hint of sadness. "That's an understatement," he said. "You carried me to my room, didn't you?" "Well," she said, embarrassed, "I helped you walk. You had your key card, and I just didn't want you to fall or something." He looked at her for a long moment, as if studying her. "You didn't have to. Most people wouldn't have bothered." Emily looked down at her notepad. Maybe. But I believe if someone needs help, you help them. Simple as that. The man smiled again, genuinely this time. That's a rare attitude these days. He reached into his pocket and took out something small, the note she had left beside the bed. The paper was folded neatly. I found this, he said. It was the first thing I saw when I woke up. Emily blinked in surprise. You kept it. I did, he said quietly. Not many people would do what you did for a stranger. You didn't know me, yet you cared. That meant something. She didn't know what to say. No guest had ever spoken to her like that. Most of the rich people who stayed there barely noticed the staff. They ordered, complained, and left. But this man's words felt sincere. I'm just doing my job, sir, she said, trying to keep it professional. He smiled again, shaking his head slightly. No, you were being human. Then he extended his hand. I'm Richard. Richard Dalton. The name sounded familiar, but Emily couldn't place it. She shook his hand politely. Nice to meet you, Mr. Dalton. He looked around the restaurant for a moment. I used to come here often years ago. This hotel used to mean something to me. Used to? Emily asked softly. Richard sighed, his expression turning distant. I built this hotel. Every brick, every design, it was my dream. But lately, it's become more of a burden than a joy. People I trusted tried to take it from me. The night you saw me, I was ready to give up everything. Emily froze. You built it? She repeated, almost in disbelief. You're the owner? He nodded slowly. Was. Maybe still am. Depends who you ask. She didn't know how to react. The man she had helped, the one lying drunk and miserable, was the billionaire owner of the hotel she worked in. She couldn't imagine someone so powerful being so broken. Richard looked at her again and said softly, But that night, when you helped me without knowing who I was, you reminded me that there are still good people left. You reminded me that not everything is lost. Emily smiled shyly. I just did what anyone would do. He shook his head. No, Emily. Not everyone would. And with that, he left her standing there, holding her tray, her heart racing. She watched him walk toward the elevator, his figure tall and confident again. For the rest of the night, she couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. She didn't know what it meant yet, but deep down, she felt that this was just the beginning. That somehow, her simple act of kindness had started something she couldn't even imagine. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the hotel lobby's glass walls, lighting up the shiny floors and golden decorations. Emily was back at work, her hair tied neatly, her white shirt crisp, and her apron perfectly in place. It was just another long day for her, but she didn't mind. Work kept her busy, and busy meant fewer worries about her mother's medical bills. As she started her morning duties, wiping tables and setting out fresh napkins, she noticed a few guests already sitting for breakfast. The familiar smell of coffee and pancakes filled the air. Everything felt normal, peaceful, until she remembered what had happened the night before. The billionaire, Mr. Richard Dalton. The memory of helping him to his room replayed in her mind. The way he had looked at her, so lost, so broken. She couldn't shake that image away. She had no idea if he even remembered her or the note she had left beside his bed. But deep down, she hoped he did. She didn't do it for thanks, but sometimes, it's nice to know that kindness matters. A few hours later, while she was serving breakfast to a group of businessmen, she noticed the manager of the hotel talking to a few staff members in a hurry. Something seemed different today. Everyone was nervous. The manager was straightening his tie again and again, a habit he only had when someone important was visiting. Emily leaned over to Lily, her friend at the reception desk, and whispered, What's going on? Why is everyone acting strange? Lily whispered back, Apparently, the owner of the hotel is here, like the actual owner. No one has seen him in months. They say he's coming to inspect the place. Emily's heart skipped. The owner? Richard Dalton? Could it be the same man? She quickly shook off the thought. No, it couldn't be. What were the chances? Around noon, the sound of expensive leather shoes clicking on the marble floor echoed through the lobby. Emily turned to see him, Richard, walking in with two assistants. But this time, he didn't look like the broken man from that rainy night. His posture was strong, his eyes calm, and his confidence filled the room. He was wearing a dark blue suit that fit him perfectly, and people stepped aside as he walked. Emily froze where she stood, unsure what to do. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from disbelief. He looked like a completely different person. Richard noticed her immediately. Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world had gone quiet. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. It wasn't a polite, business smile. It was warm, familiar, and thankful. He walked up to her, ignoring the curious glances of other staff members. "Emily Parker," he said gently. "You're hard to forget." Emily blinked in shock. You remember my name?" "Of course," he said. "You helped me when no one else did, and I never forget kindness." She felt her cheeks warm. "I just did what anyone would do, sir." Richard chuckled softly. "You keep saying that, but I know better. Most people would have walked away. You didn't." Emily didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to talking to people like him. People who owned hotels, wore $1,000 suits, and had assistants following them. He looked around the restaurant. "This place looks great. You all do a good job here." Then he turned back to her and asked, "How long have you been working here, Emily?" "Almost 3 years, sir," she replied. "I started right after college." He nodded slowly. "You like your job?" She hesitated before answering. "I do. It's honest work. And the people here are kind mostly." She smiled a little at her own words. He smiled too, but then his face grew serious. "You know, when I built this hotel, I wanted it to be a place where people felt cared for. Not just the guests, but the staff too. Lately, I've been wondering if that dream still exists." Emily frowned slightly. "I think it does, sir. Maybe not everyone sees it, but kindness is still here. Sometimes, it just hides behind tired faces and long shifts." For a moment, Richard didn't say anything. Then he gave a small nod, clearly moved by her words. "You remind me of why I started this business in the first place," he said quietly. Just then, his assistant came over to whisper something in his ear. Richard nodded, then turned back to Emily. "I have to go to a meeting now, but I'll be seeing you again soon, Miss Parker." And with that, he walked away, leaving Emily standing there, her mind spinning. "He'll be seeing me again soon?" she thought. What did he mean by that? The rest of her day passed in a blur. Every time she wiped a table or served a drink, her thoughts drifted back to him. She still couldn't believe she had helped the billionaire owner of the hotel, the man everyone feared and respected, when he was drunk and broken, not knowing who he was. That night, as she walked home under the streetlights, Emily couldn't stop smiling. She thought about how strange life could be, how one small act of kindness could connect two completely different worlds. She didn't know it yet, but Richard's words, "I'll be seeing you again soon," were not just polite talk. He meant it. Something inside her heart told her that this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning. And though she couldn't explain it, Emily felt that her life was about to change. Not because of luck, but because she chose to care when no one else did. That night, as she lay in bed, the rain started again, softly tapping against her window. Emily smiled to herself, remembering that rainy night when she helped a stranger. Back then, she thought she had done a small, simple thing. But life was about to prove her wrong. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness lead to the biggest surprises. 3 days passed since Emily last saw Mr. Richard Dalton. The hotel returned to its normal routine. Guests checking in and out, phones ringing at the reception, and waiters rushing to serve meals. But for Emily, things didn't feel quite the same. She tried to focus on her work, yet her mind often drifted back to the man she had helped. She wondered if he had meant what he said, that he'd be seeing her again soon. It was a bright Wednesday morning when everything changed. The hotel lobby buzzed with excitement. Staff members whispered among themselves, adjusting their uniforms, straightening their name tags, and checking the decorations for the 10th time. Something big was clearly happening. Emily came in a little late that day, still tying her apron when she noticed everyone's faces full of tension. She asked Lily at the reception, "What's going on? Why is everyone acting like there's a royal visit?" Lily's eyes widened. "Haven't you heard? Mr. Dalton is back. The billionaire owner himself. He's here for a private visit. The general manager said everyone should be on their best behavior." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "He's here? Again?" "Yes," Lily whispered excitedly. "He arrived this morning with his assistants. He's going around inspecting everything, the restaurant, the rooms, even the staff kitchen. No one expected him to show up twice in 1 week." Emily felt her stomach tighten. She had met him twice before, once when he was drunk and helpless, and again when he thanked her. But this time felt different. Now everyone knew who he really was. The powerful billionaire who owned the place she worked in. She tried to calm herself down and went to the restaurant area to start her shift. As she was setting up the tables, she suddenly heard a familiar voice behind her. "Good morning, Miss Parker." She turned quickly. It was him. Mr. Dalton stood there, looking composed and confident. His suit perfectly pressed, his calm smile the same as before. He had that kind of presence that made everyone stop and stare. "Good morning, sir," Emily said politely, her hands nervously clutching her tray. "You seem busy," he said, looking around. "This place looks even better than last time." "Thank you, sir," she replied. "We try our best." He looked at her for a moment, then asked, "May I sit?" Emily nodded quickly, and he took a seat at one of the corner tables. It felt strange to see him there, not as a broken man like before, but as someone in full control. Still, his eyes softened when he looked at her, like he wasn't just seeing a waitress, but someone who mattered. "I wanted to thank you again, Emily," he said after a moment. "I read your note again that morning. Drink this when you wake up. Hope you feel better." Simple words, but they stayed with me. She smiled shyly. "I didn't think you'd even notice it, sir." He chuckled. "Notice it? I couldn't forget it. You know, that night I was not only drunk. I was lost, angry, betrayed, and tired of everyone around me pretending to care. But then someone, you, treated me like a person, not a name or a number." Emily felt her chest tighten with emotion. "I just thought you needed help. That's all." He smiled. "That's exactly what I needed. Genuine kindness. No hidden reason." For a while they sat quietly. He ordered coffee, and Emily poured it for him carefully. Then he asked, "How long have you been working here?" 3 years, sir. I started after college. I studied hospitality but couldn't finish because of personal reasons," she said, hesitating to mention her mother's illness. He nodded slowly. "You seem to love what you do." "I do," she said honestly. "It's not always easy, but I like meeting people, and I like making others feel comfortable." Mr. Dalton smiled approvingly. "You have something that money can't buy, Emily Hart. You'd be surprised how rare that is these days." Before she could answer, the general manager walked over quickly, nervous and sweating. "Sir, I didn't know you'd be dining here personally. Would you like me to assign a senior waiter to your service?" Mr. Dalton raised a hand calmly. "That won't be necessary. I'm happy with Emily." The manager froze, clearly surprised that the billionaire owner was comfortable being served by a young waitress. "Of course, sir," he said awkwardly and stepped away. After he left, Emily whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Richard smiled softly. "I wanted to. You treated me like a person when no one else would. It's only fair I do the same." His words made her heart warm. She couldn't explain why, but she felt a strange connection forming. Not romantic, but something deeper. A sense of respect and understanding between two people from completely different worlds. As their conversation continued, Richard began sharing bits of his story. He told her how he had started from nothing, working long hours in small hotels before building his own empire. He spoke about the betrayals he had faced, trusted partners who turned against him, people who used him for money, and the loneliness that came with power. Emily listened quietly, her eyes full of empathy. For the first time in a long while, Richard spoke freely, not as a billionaire, but as a man who just needed to be heard. When he finished, Emily said softly, "I think you forgot why you started. You built this place to give people comfort. And you still can. You just have to believe again." Richard stared at her for a moment, her simple words striking deep in his heart. Then he smiled, not his usual business smile, but a real one. "You're right, Emily. Maybe I did forget." He stood up and looked around the restaurant one more time. "You've given me more clarity in 5 minutes than my advisors have in 5 years, he said lightly. Emily laughed nervously. "I don't know about that, sir. I just said what I felt." As he prepared to leave, he said one last thing that made her freeze. "Emily Parker, I'd like to see you again soon. There's something important I want to discuss with you." She nodded, still unsure what he meant. When he walked away, the staff stared at her in awe. Everyone wanted to know what the billionaire had talked about, but Emily stayed quiet. That night, as she left the hotel, her mind was full of questions. What did he want to discuss? Why her? She didn't know the answers, but she felt one thing for sure. Her life was slowly changing, and she could feel the beginning of something big. The next afternoon, Emily came to work a little early. She didn't know why, but ever since her last meeting with Mr. Dalton, she felt different. Excited, nervous, and curious all at once. His words, "I'd like to see you again soon," kept repeating in her mind. What could he possibly want to discuss with her? She was just a waitress. Important people like him didn't usually talk to people like her unless there was a reason. As she was preparing the tables, she noticed the hotel lobby buzzing with activity again. Security guards stood near the main entrance, and several luxury cars were parked outside. Everyone was whispering the billionaire was back. Emily tried to stay calm, pretending to focus on her work, but her heart was beating fast. Around noon, Mr. Dalton entered the restaurant again. This time, he looked more relaxed, smiling warmly as he greeted the staff. The manager rushed to greet him, but Mr. Dalton raised a hand and said, "It's all right. I'm here to talk to someone." Then his eyes met Emily's, and he walked straight toward her. "Miss Parker," he said in his calm voice, "do you have a few minutes to talk?" Emily blinked, completely surprised. "Of course, sir," she said quickly, wiping her hands nervously on her apron. He gestured toward a quiet corner of the restaurant. "Let's sit for a moment." They sat down, and for a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, just heavy, like something important was about to be said. Then Richard took a deep breath and spoke. "Emily," he began softly, "I want to tell you something I haven't told anyone here. That night you helped me, I wasn't just drunk. I was broken. I had found out that one of my most trusted business partners betrayed me. Someone I considered family tried to steal a major part of my company. The betrayal hurt more than losing money. It made me question everyone around me." Emily listened quietly, her eyes full of sympathy. "I thought everyone cared only about what I had," he continued. "People smiled to my face, but behind me, they only wanted my name, my power, my wealth. I felt alone, Emily, completely alone. That night I drank because I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to disappear for a while." Emily's heart ached. She had seen the pain in his eyes that night, but hearing his story made her understand it even more deeply. "But then," he said with a small smile, "you came along, a complete stranger. You didn't care who I was or what I had. You just helped me without asking for anything. That kindness brought me back to myself. It reminded me that there are still genuine people in the world." Emily felt her throat tighten. "I didn't do much, sir. I just didn't want to leave someone alone who needed help." He nodded slowly. That's exactly what makes it special. You did it because it was the right thing, not because you expected something in return. That's rare, Emily. Very rare. He paused for a moment, then leaned slightly forward. Do you know what's funny? I built this hotel from nothing. When I first started, I had only a dream, to create a place where people could feel cared for. Not just the guests, but the workers too. I wanted kindness to be the foundation. But somewhere along the way, I lost that vision. I got busy chasing profits, fighting competitors, and I forgot the very thing that made me start all this. Emily smiled softly. Sometimes we all forget, sir, but we can always remember again. He looked at her thoughtfully, then nodded. You're right. You reminded me of that. You showed me what real hospitality means. Not service, but heart. Emily blushed slightly. I'm glad if I could help in some way. You helped more than you realize, he said sincerely. In fact, you've made me rethink many things about how I run my company. I've seen hundreds of employees. Smart, skilled, polished, but very few with genuine kindness. You, Emily, have something special. Something this place needs. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? He smiled mysteriously. You'll see soon enough. Before she could ask more, his phone buzzed. His assistant came over and whispered something in his ear. Richard stood up and said, I have to attend an important meeting now, but I'll be back in a few days. There's something I'd like to discuss with you then. Something important. Emily nodded slowly, trying to hide her curiosity. All right, sir. He gave her a kind smile. And Emily, thank you. You may think it was just a small act of kindness, but for me, it was a turning point. When he walked away, Emily stood frozen for a few seconds. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. A billionaire, a man with everything in the world, saying that her simple kindness changed something in him, felt unreal. That night, after her shift, she sat by her apartment window, watching the city lights. She thought about her life, her struggles, her mother's illness, the endless shifts. And then she thought about Mr. Dalton's words. For the first time in a long while, she felt proud of herself. Not because she helped a rich man, but because she stayed true to who she was, kind, honest, and human. Over the next few days, Emily went back to her routine. But inside, something had shifted. Every time she walked through the hotel halls, she felt a quiet sense of hope, like something big was waiting just around the corner. She noticed small changes too. The staff seemed more polite, more respectful. Even the manager started treating everyone better, as if Mr. Dalton's visit had reminded them all of something they'd forgotten. That kindness mattered. But Emily had no idea what was coming next. She didn't know that the man she had helped on a rainy night was about to change her life forever. What she thought was just a small act of compassion was about to turn into the biggest surprise of her life. One that would leave everyone in the hotel speechless. 3 days passed, and Emily's life went on as usual. She worked her long shifts, served customers with her usual smile, and went home exhausted but content. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about what Mr. Dalton had said before leaving. There's something important I'd like to discuss with you. His words kept echoing in her mind like a song she couldn't forget. She tried to convince herself not to overthink it. Maybe he just wanted to thank her again or offer a small reward for helping him. Rich people did that sometimes, right? But a tiny spark of hope inside her kept whispering, what if it's something bigger? On the fourth morning, when she entered the hotel, the atmosphere felt different. Everyone seemed nervous and excited. The manager was fixing his tie every few minutes. The cleaners were rushing to make everything spotless, and even the receptionist was practicing her good morning smile in the mirror. Emily asked her coworker Jenna what was going on. Didn't you hear? Jenna whispered excitedly. Mr. Dalton's coming back today. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Already? Yeah, Jenna nodded. Apparently, he's bringing some business associates. The manager's been freaking out all morning. Emily smiled nervously. She tried to look calm, but her hands were trembling a little. She quickly tied her hair, adjusted her apron, and got ready for whatever the day would bring. Around noon, the sound of luxury cars filled the driveway. Everyone in the lobby straightened up. The doors opened, and Mr. Dalton walked in, dressed sharply in a dark blue suit, his confident smile lighting up the room. Behind him were two other men and a woman, all dressed in formal business attire. The manager ran to greet him. "Welcome back, Mr. Dalton. It's an honor to have you again." "Thank you, Mark," Mr. Dalton said politely, glancing around the lobby. His eyes soon found Emily, who was standing near the reception desk, pretending to organize menus. He smiled warmly and said, "Ah, there she is." Everyone turned to look at her. Emily froze. She could feel the curious eyes of her coworkers and the confused look of her manager as Mr. Dalton walked straight toward her. "Emily," he said kindly, "it's good to see you again." "Good to see you too, sir," she replied nervously. "I hope you're free for a short talk," he said. "Of course," she said, trying to steady her voice. He led her to the same quiet corner of the restaurant where they had spoken before. The other executives followed but stayed a few steps behind. Once they sat down, Mr. Dalton's tone grew serious yet warm. "Emily," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation. What you said about kindness, about remembering what really matters. It stayed with me. It reminded me of why I started this business in the first place." She nodded, not sure what to say. He continued, "I've decided to make some changes in how my company operates. I want to bring people like you, honest, compassionate, hardworking, into leadership roles. People who understand that success is built on humanity, not just money." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "That's wonderful, sir." He smiled. "It is, and I'd like you to be part of it." She blinked, confused. "Me? But I'm just a waitress." He chuckled softly. "You're not just anything, Emily. You're exactly the kind of person I want leading this place. I've watched you these past few days, how you treat the guests, how you help your coworkers, even how you stay calm when things go wrong. You're the heart of this hotel, and it's time you're recognized for it." Emily felt her breath catch. I don't understand." He looked at his assistant and nodded. The woman stepped forward, holding a small folder. Mr. Dalton opened it and placed a few documents on the table. "Emily Parker," he said, "I'm officially transferring ownership of this hotel to you." For a second, Emily thought she had misheard him. She stared at him, speechless. "What?" she whispered. "You heard me right," he said gently. "I'm giving you this hotel. It's no longer mine." The words hit her like a wave. She shook her head in disbelief. "Sir, I can't accept that. It's too much. I didn't do anything to deserve this." Mr. Dalton smiled. "You did everything to deserve it. You reminded me what true value means. You showed me that integrity and kindness are worth more than gold. This hotel needs someone like you. Someone who truly cares about people, not just profits." Tears filled her eyes. "But I don't know how to run a hotel." He laughed softly. "Don't worry. You won't be alone. My team will guide you through everything. You'll learn fast. I can see that in you." Emily covered her mouth with her trembling hands. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just promise me one thing," he said kindly. "Never lose the kindness that made you who you are. That's your greatest strength." By now, the entire staff had gathered near the corner, whispering and watching in shock. When Mr. Dalton stood and handed her the folder, the manager's jaw dropped. "Mr. Dalton," he stammered, "is this a joke?" Mr. Dalton turned to him calmly. "No, Mark, it's not. Starting today, Emily is the new owner of this hotel. You'll report to her from now on." The staff gasped. Emily stood frozen, clutching the folder. The room was silent except for the faint sound of the air conditioner. Then Mr. Dalton smiled and extended his hand. "Congratulations, Emily. You've earned this more than anyone." Slowly, she shook his hand, still unable to believe what was happening. "Thank you, sir," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to thank you enough." He smiled warmly. "Just keep being who you are. That's enough." As he turned to leave, the staff began clapping. It started with one person, then two, until the entire restaurant was filled with applause. Emily stood there, tears running down her cheeks, holding the folder that now held her future. That night, when she went home, she sat on her small couch, staring at the documents. Her name, Emily Parker, was written under the title owner. She traced the letters with her finger, still in disbelief. From a tired waitress struggling to make ends meet, she had become the owner of the very hotel where she once served coffee. All because she had chosen to help a drunk man without expecting anything in return. Her heart was full. For the first time in her life, Emily believed that kindness truly had the power to change everything. The news spread through the hotel like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew that Emily, the quiet, hard-working waitress, had become the new owner. People whispered in the hallways, stared at her with wide eyes, and couldn't stop talking about the unbelievable twist of fate. Some were genuinely happy for her, while others simply couldn't believe it was true. Emily, on the other hand, still felt like she was dreaming. She woke up early, just as she always did, but this time she didn't have to wear her waitress uniform. When she stood in front of the mirror, she hesitated for a moment, then smiled shyly at her reflection. "I guess this is really happening," she whispered to herself. She reached the hotel a little before 9. The security guards, who once barely noticed her, now greeted her with respectful nods. "Good morning, Ms. Parker," one of them said. She smiled back, still getting used to the new title. Inside, the entire staff was waiting in the lobby. The manager, Mark, was standing at the front with a forced smile on his face. Emily could sense he was uncomfortable. After all, he was now reporting to the woman he used to boss around. As she entered, everyone clapped softly, unsure how to act around their new owner. Emily raised her hands and said gently, "Please, you don't have to do that. I'm still the same Emily." Her voice was calm, kind, and full of warmth, the same tone she used when she talked to guests. That made everyone smile, easing the tension in the air. Mr. Dalton's assistant, Olivia, joined her soon after. She was there to help Emily understand her new role and handle the formalities. They went to the office, the big one on the top floor that had once belonged to Mr. Dalton himself. When Emily stepped inside, she stopped in awe. The room was beautiful, large glass windows, elegant furniture, and a view of the whole city. She slowly walked toward the desk and ran her hand across the polished wood. "I used to serve coffee in this office," she murmured. Olivia smiled. "And now it's yours." For a few moments, Emily just stood there quietly, letting the reality sink in. Her heart was full of gratitude but also nervousness. She didn't know how to run a hotel. She wasn't used to giving orders or making big decisions. All she knew was how to serve people with kindness, but maybe she thought that was exactly what the hotel needed. Over the next few hours, Olivia helped her go through documents, staff lists, and schedules. Emily listened carefully, asking questions, trying to understand every detail. Her determination impressed everyone in the room. Even Mark, the manager, had to admit silently that she had a natural presence. Calm, humble, but firm when needed. Later that day, Emily gathered the entire staff in the dining hall for a short meeting. She stood in front of them, her hands slightly trembling, but her smile steady. "I know this feels strange for everyone," she began softly. "It still feels strange for me too. I was standing right where you are not long ago, taking orders, cleaning tables, and doing my best every day. I never imagined I'd be here, not in a million years. But life is full of surprises, and sometimes kindness brings them when you least expect it." The staff listened quietly, touched by her honesty. "I want you all to know," she continued, "that nothing about this place will change overnight. We'll still work hard, we'll still treat our guests with respect, and we'll still support each other. The only difference is, I'll make sure everyone here is treated fairly. No one will be overlooked or disrespected just because of their position." Someone in the crowd started clapping, and soon the entire room joined in. Emily felt her eyes water. She wasn't trying to sound like a boss. She just wanted everyone to feel valued, the same way she had once wished to be treated. After the meeting, a few of her coworkers came to hug her. Jenna, her closest friend at the hotel, had tears in her eyes. "You deserve this more than anyone, Emily," she said. "You've always been the kindest person here." Emily hugged her tightly. "Thank you. But I couldn't have done it without people like you." That evening, she walked around the hotel, watching the guests, the staff, the laughter in the lobby. Everything felt more beautiful, more alive. She remembered the first night she saw Mr. Dalton, drunk and lost, and how one small act of compassion had changed her fate completely. Later, she sat alone in the office, the city lights glowing outside the window. A knock came on the door, and she turned to see Mr. Dalton standing there, smiling warmly. "Mr. Dalton," she said, standing up quickly. "Please call me Richard," he said with a laugh. "You're the boss now." She smiled shyly. "I still can't believe all this. Feels unreal." He nodded, walking closer. "It's real, Emily, and you've earned every bit of it." He looked around the office, then said, "You know, when I built this hotel, I dreamed it would be a place where people felt cared for. Not just guests, but everyone. Somewhere along the way, I lost that dream. But you brought it back. You reminded me that real success isn't about money or power. It's about people like you." Emily's eyes softened. "I just did what anyone would have done, sir." He smiled. "No, not anyone would have. That's what makes you different." They talked for a while, about her plans, her ideas for the hotel, and the future. Richard listened proudly, impressed by her thoughtful suggestions. She wanted to start a fund for the staff's education, improve working conditions, and create more affordable rooms for travelers who couldn't usually stay in such luxury places. When their meeting ended, Richard said quietly, "You're going to make this hotel better than it's ever been." After he left, Emily sat down again and looked out the window. The city lights sparkled like stars, and a gentle smile crossed her face. She thought about her mother, who always told her, "Good things come to good people." For the first time, she truly believed it. From that night on, Emily didn't see herself as just a lucky woman. She saw herself as someone with a purpose to make others feel valued, just as Mr. Dalton had made her feel. And deep inside, she promised herself one thing. No matter how rich or powerful she became, she would never forget the night she helped a drunk man who changed her life forever. Months passed, and the hotel began to change in ways no one expected. Under Emily's leadership, it became warmer, friendlier, and full of life. Guests noticed it immediately. The smiles of the staff seemed more genuine, the atmosphere felt lighter, and everyone worked as a team instead of just following orders. The Pinewood Grand Hotel wasn't just a place to stay anymore. It became a place people remembered. Emily worked harder than ever, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Every morning she arrived early, walking through the lobby to greet her employees personally. She'd stop to chat with the cleaners, help the chefs taste a new dish, or assist receptionists when the line got long. Even though she now owned the hotel, she never acted like she was above anyone. She treated everyone as equals, the same way she wished to be treated when she was just a waitress. Her kindness had a powerful effect. Staff who once worked only for their paycheck now worked with pride. They respected Emily not because she was their boss, but because she understood them. She knew their struggles, their worries, and their dreams, because she had lived them too. One day, during a staff meeting, Emily surprised everyone by announcing a new program. "From next month," she said, smiling, "we'll be starting a scholarship fund for any staff member or their children who want to continue their studies. No one should give up on their dreams because of money." The room went silent for a moment, then burst into applause. Some employees even had tears in their eyes. Emily's decision touched their hearts deeply. She was changing lives, not just running a business. The hotel's reputation began to soar. Guests left glowing reviews online, calling it the friendliest place in the city. Reporters started visiting to write about the waitress turned owner, who transformed a luxury hotel into a symbol of compassion and success. Soon, magazines and TV stations were calling, wanting to interview her. At first, Emily was shy about it. She never liked attention. But when a journalist asked her how she went from a waitress to a hotel owner, she smiled humbly and said, "It started with a small act of kindness. I didn't help a man because he was rich. I helped him because he was human." Her words went viral. People around the world shared her story. She received letters from strangers, young girls who said she inspired them, workers who said she gave them hope, and business owners who promised to run their companies with more kindness. One afternoon, as Emily sat in her office reading some of those letters, she heard a gentle knock on the door. "Come in," she said, and to her surprise, it was Richard Dalton. He looked as calm and wise as ever, but there was a proud glimmer in his eyes. Well, he said with a grin. "Look at this place. You've made it better than I ever imagined." Emily stood up, smiling warmly. "Mr. Dalton, or should I say Richard, I can't thank you enough for what you did for me." He chuckled softly. "You've already thanked me 100 times. And honestly, you've done more for this hotel than I ever could. You proved that success doesn't need to come from power. It can come from kindness." Emily laughed lightly. "You taught me that believing in people can change everything." They sat and talked for a while. Richard told her how he had stepped away from business for good, spending more time on charity and mentoring young entrepreneurs. "Your story inspired me too," he admitted. "You reminded me why I started in the first place, not to build buildings, but to build lives." Emily's heart warmed at his words. "You gave me a chance when no one else would have," she said. "And because of that, I want to give chances to others." "That," he said proudly, "is why you were the right person for this." Before leaving, Richard handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a golden key charm on a necklace, simple but beautiful. "A reminder," he said, "that you now hold the key not just to this hotel, but to many people's futures." Tears filled her eyes as she hugged him. "Thank you, Richard, for believing in me." After he left, Emily stood by the window holding the golden key. She looked out at the bustling city below and thought about how far she had come, from serving late-night coffees to leading a business admired by thousands. All because one rainy night, she had chosen to help a man in need. That evening, she went to the restaurant, where some guests were having dinner. Among them was a young waitress, struggling to balance several trays at once. The girl accidentally dropped a glass, and it shattered on the floor. The sound made everyone turn to look. The poor girl's face turned red with embarrassment, and she began to apologize nervously. Emily walked over gently, crouched beside her, and helped pick up the pieces. "It's all right," she said softly. "Accidents happen." The girl looked up, surprised to see the hotel's owner helping her. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to." Emily smiled warmly. "I know. I used to do the same job, remember? You're doing great. Just take a deep breath and start again." The girl nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. As Emily stood up, a few guests clapped quietly, touched by the scene. It reminded them that kindness was truly the soul of the place. Later that night, Emily walked through the quiet hotel halls, feeling a deep peace inside her heart. She had money now, fame, and respect, but none of that mattered more than knowing she had stayed true to herself. She stopped by the front desk and looked around at her staff, smiling and laughing together. For a moment, she imagined her younger self standing there in her old uniform, tired but hopeful. She whispered softly, "We did it." The lights shimmered above her as she turned to leave. The hotel doors closed behind her, but her story, the story of a kind-hearted waitress who helped a drunk billionaire and ended up owning his hotel, had just begun to inspire the world. And from that day on, people said the same thing about Pinewood Grand. It's not just a hotel. It's a place where kindness built an empire.